You've said that the Franklin scandal and the Epstein cover-up are carbon copies of each other. What are the elements that you see with Epstein before we dive into the specifics? Because there's a shit ton we're going to get into. What are sort of the overarching similarities you see between the Epstein cover-up and the Franklin scandal?
Well, you had a couple of pedophilic pimps. You had Maxwell and Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, flying kids around the country and actually around the world too. Also that island. Epstein was hooked up to intelligence. All his houses were wired for audiovisual blackmail. A grand jury was used to cover up Epstein. And Epstein, like Spence, killed himself, or ostensibly killed himself. But Ghislaine Maxwell kept her mouth shut, and now she's living in a dormitory. She got a sentence of 20 years. The Ghislaine Maxwell, it really shows just how corrupt it is, because she trafficked children for 25 years. And she was indicted on one count of child trafficking. And actually, all of her indictments, or a number of her indictments, had conspiracy with it. But there was no other conspirators that were indicted. That should kind of give people an idea of how corrupt that is.
Yeah, you've said that her trial was a sham. That
it was carefully choreographed.
Yeah. How was, or actually, let's get into Jeffrey Epstein's origin story first, because if we jump straight into the trial, it might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Where does Epstein come from? What's his background story?
He is essentially a blue-collar background from Coney Island. Not too far from here.
Yeah. And so blue-collar, like Spence and King. That sort of upbringing.
Yeah. And I don't know how, but he ended up at Interlaken, which is a very prestigious arts camp, in 1967. If you go to my website, I've got pictures of little Jeffrey Epstein at Interlaken, and I've got someone that is a doppelganger for William Barr.
The Attorney General?
Yes, that didn't go after. Actually, William Barr was the Attorney General for Franklin, and then he was the Attorney General for Epstein under Trump.
Wow. So William Barr is connected to the Franklin scandal and the Epstein cover-up.
Yeah, he played an integral role in covering both of them up.
Okay.
And I believe that he and Epstein went to Interlaken Art Camp at the same time. Interlaken can't lie about Epstein, because there was an Epstein Lodge. Epstein gave them $500,000 to build an Epstein. And needless to say, it's no longer called Epstein Lodge or whatever. It had Epstein something.
Yeah. I'm sure they didn't give the money back, though. I'm sure they kept that.
No. The place was already built. So,
okay, gotcha.
But I've got yearbooks from that art camp. And what's really bizarre is there's no names. Have you ever seen a yearbook that has no names?
I can't say I have.
No. And your viewers and listeners can go to my website, nickbryantnyc.com, and they can see a little Jeffrey Epstein, and they can see who I believe is a little Don Barr, or not Don Barr, but William Barr. But Interlaken said that William Barr was never there. But what's interesting is 7 years later, Donald Barr, William Barr's father, hires Jeffrey Epstein to teach at Dalton, which is one of the most prestigious preparatory schools in the United States, in the world. And Jeffrey Epstein is a college dropout. So that doesn't make a lot of sense.
So Donald Barr is the principal of Dalton?
He was the headmaster of Dalton, who hired Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay. So Epstein, college dropout, gets hired to teach at one of the most prestigious high schools in America.
Yes.
Where does he go from there? How does he start to infiltrate high society?
Well, he goes to Bear Stearns, and then in 1988, and this is stunning, actually. In 1988, Les Wexner, who owns The Limited, which has
Mm.
Victoria's Secret, Tommy Hilfiger, et cetera, gives Jeffrey Epstein the keys to his kingdom, gives him power of attorney over everything, his billions of dollars. Whatever Jeffrey Epstein wants to do with his money, he can do.
What year is this?
1988.
So how old is Epstein at this point?
He would be in his 30s.
Okay, so he's a 30-year-old college dropout that taught for a few years,
Yeah.
gets a position at Bear Stearns, but he's not a billionaire financier.
No.
He's not managing billionaire portfolios at this
No.
point, but a billionaire hands Epstein the keys
To his
to his
kingdom.
billionaire fortune.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting. I can't recall if it's the New York Times or Vanity Fair, but this, when I said stunning, this is stunning. The reason why, and I wish I could remember if it was Vanity Fair or New York Times. It's one or the other. I mean, both of them played an integral role in covering all this up. But the reason why, and they said this, they wrote it, it was published. The reason why Les Wexner gave Jeffrey Epstein the keys to his kingdom is because he was lonely. They said that. Yeah.
That was published. A quote from Les Wexner said, "I was lonely."
No, the magazine.
The magazine
said it was because he was lonely.
Okay.
That he gave Jeffrey Epstein the keys to his kingdom. He was lonely.
Was it some sort of like Onion type article?
No,
sarcastic?
no,
They were genuinely reporting.
This is the bullshit that has been sold to America.
Yeah.
And because the mainstream media doesn't want to see justice here, I've been following Epstein since 2011, 2012. And I've never seen any major mainstream media scream for justice. They love to dig up salacious facts, but none of them scream for justice.
The lonely thing is weird, though, because Les Wexner has billions of dollars at this point. He could easily pay a companion for much less. That there are people that would hang out with him.
Well, he's married and he's got children. So yeah.
But he has resources. He could go fuck off on a private jet somewhere, find some, companionship for much less than signing over the keys to his fortune, but yet he says I'm lonely, or Variety, whoever reports Les Wexner is lonely.
It was either Vanity, I think it was Vanity Fair. It was either Vanity Fair or the New York Times.
And reports that Les Wexner is feeling lonely, and therefore to cure his loneliness, he gives mid-30s dropout the authority over his entire fortune. I mean, it's crazy, but it also doesn't make sense at all.
Because I guess that Jeffrey would be his friend then.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard sell to not become your friend at that point.
There's so much bullshit that has been written about Epstein. So much bullshit that it's frustrating to me.
Yeah. What is some of the bullshit that was written about Epstein before all of the pedophile island and the dark corners of his personality came to light? What sort of BS narrative headline traffic was Epstein perpetuating back in the day?
Well, he was a successful hedge fund manager, and then it came out that he was like a lone pedophile. Like, you've got Lee Harvey Oswald as a lone shooter. Epstein was a lone pedophile. And the Franklin scandal had been published in 2009, 2010. I did not want to investigate another network. I really didn't. But I kept on seeing these articles where he's a lone pedophile, and I'm not buying it, considering how well I know Franklin. And then there's that grand jury that was completely cooked that said that he didn't molest a single child. So I was living in Brooklyn. I was pretty broke, but I had enough money to go to Florida. And I went to Florida and I started investigating.